Welcome to the Omnibus Show, a program for people who are interested in everything, with deep conversations on a wide variety of subjects. And now your host, Dave Gibbs.
Hello and welcome to this episode of the Omnibus Show, the program for people who are interested in everything, with deep conversations on a wide variety of subjects. Our guest today is Brent Marty, who is the Director of Music and Education for Booth Tarkington Civic Theatre. Marty has been actively involved in the Indianapolis Arts Community for 25 years, working with several local organizations as director, musical director, performer, instructor, and accompanist. He has helmed over 125 productions as music director. In his current position with Civic Theatre, Marty and his team administrate the state's largest classroom-based theater education program. Marty was named a Creative Arts Renewal Fellow by the Arts Council of Indianapolis and is a proud graduate of the Ball State University Department of Theater. Brent, welcome.
Thank you.
Good to have you here.
It's good to be here.
Can you tell us about your milestones in music and how that developed toward your career in theater, and really those points that really brought you in, the whole process of...
Sure. How much time do we have? I can go far back. I have early memories. My grandmother had a piano in her house.
Yeah.
This is like the story of everyone who does music. My grandmother had a piano in her house, and I was somehow drawn to that, and I would plink around, sometimes my grandmother would play. My parents always had some kind of music going in the car or even at home. I remember the 8-track tapes. Remember these?
Yeah.
Yes, or the record album you would have playing whatever they were interested in listening to. And so it sort of just seeped in. And then as I got older, my grandmother would take me, she was a big influence for me musically. She would take me to symphony concerts. She always had classical music playing in the house. So these sort of experiences made me go, oh, this is enjoyable to me. I'm developing, I didn't know this at the time, developing an appreciation of it. And then it went into, you get into school years. And I always loved music class. Let's go to music class. I had a crazy teacher. I shouldn't say she was crazy. She was a very interesting woman. Mrs. Pike. She, for music class, you would go from your elementary school, you would go to music class like once a week.
Sure, yeah.
Mrs. Pike, if you were going on a Friday, Mrs. Pike, she wouldn't necessarily have out the little instruments and the books. She would put on popular 45s of the day and put up the lyrics on the transparency machine.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
And we would sing along to Neil Diamond. like this is like in the
Sweet
fourth grade.
Caroline.
Yeah. And so again, I'm like, oh my gosh, and I would sing.
How fun.
So then, you get, the choir teacher wants you in the choir. You're loud. Yeah. So that sort of followed me. But yeah, so again, these educational influences along with the early family influences. And then my mother bought a piano for us.
Great.
And said, you're going to take piano lessons. And I said, no, I'm not. I don't need to take lessons. She said, I just bought that piano. You are taking piano lessons. Thank God she did. So I went to, I took lessons for 7 years until I graduated high school, went on to college at the Ball State University. I started out there as a vocal performance major with a minor in piano.
Okay.
And at the same time, I had started to do theater. My high school didn't have a large program, so we did a musical every other year, and it was always extracurricular. Nowadays these schools, they have, some of the programs rival some of the universities I know.
Right.
But you didn't have that, so I kind of knew I liked doing that, but there wasn't I didn't have a huge venue for it. So in college, and my voice teacher just happened to be the guy who music directed for the Department of Theater. He said to me, you need to come and audition as a freshman. You need to audition. They're doing Evita. Oh my gosh. Well, I knew Evita. I loved it. I loved that album. I loved listening to it. And so I auditioned. There was a large freshman class that year of recruits that they had brought into the Department of Theater and Dance. I was in the School of Music, but again, my voice teacher, professor, was the music director. So I auditioned. I got in. And sort of that was it.
Wow.
And before that, I had other experiences we were talking earlier, you asked me, favorite production or whatever. It's always hard to describe what that is because there's so many.
Yeah.
But I saw Les Miserables when I was going into my senior year of high school in London. So this is before it came
to
the United States. And I had never seen anything like that on that scale, epic.
It was epic.
It's
an epic production.
People would call it an opera,
right?
A contemporary. It's not, but it's pretty much sung through, and it's really the music draws you in, and I just went, oh, I want to make people feel like I'm feeling right now. This is amazing. Like, what is this? How do I get onto that?
Yeah.
And so with that spark in mind, I went, oh, and so then it was sort of a natural thing. Ball State did not have a musical theater degree at the time.
Okay.
So I eschewed the School of Music for various and sundry reasons, but I ended up a theater major, okay? And they eventually built the musical theater degree around me. Like, I was sort of the guinea pig. So I'm basically considered the first musical theater graduate of the state, which now has a thriving program with students or graduates on Broadway. My fellow alum, and I'm so proud of all of that and of the department itself. So the Ball State experience, doing all the shows there and having a degree in theater, and then kind of being thrown out into the world. Well, where do you go? In my head thought, oh, I'm going to perform. I'm going to be a performer. Broadway, I don't know, but just wherever, this is what I'm going to do. And what happened was, while I was still in school, some of my mentors recognized the musical ability that I supposedly have, and music directing. Not a lot of people know what that is necessarily. If you go to see a musical, there's a director of the play, right? Somebody who's guiding the entire production. There's a choreographer. People know what this is. They stage the dance, the movement. And then there's the music director. Well, what is that? Not the musical. I'm not directing the musical. I'm directing or supervising the music. Somebody has to teach the cast how to sing the songs. Somebody has to teach or guide the orchestra in their rehearsal. Somebody has to put all that together and work in tandem with the director and choreographer to make the whole. It's a three-pronged thing. Yeah. So I'm the third prong of that. So if you go to see a show at the theater where I work, or any production that I do at any theater, that's my contribution. I have shaped the musical element of that production. So I didn't know what that was. I mean, I knew these people existed, but when I was at school, one of my mentors was like, "You're going to music direct this next play I'm doing. It's the musical." And I was like, "What? I don't know." And we did it. It was a show called Baby. It's a great musical. And sort of that was it. Like, that laid the foundation. Then I knew how to do it. I knew I could do it. So go 10 years later, Civic Theatre calls me. I'd sent my resume. They called me. They needed somebody. I went in. They hired me. That was 1998. The rest is history.
The rest is history. So, here you are.
There is a lengthy description of my path.
Well, very good. Well, thank you very much. That gives some really great insight, especially, but it's really shaped by the core is really the music, isn't it? It starts from the music.
Yeah.
And then the communication of it with audience and with people. It really touches people when you see that, like you said, with Les Mis.
Yeah, and I think theater specifically, I play piano. Am I a virtuosic pianist? By no stretch. I can't memorize anything. I can read anything. You put anything in front of me and I'll just probably sight read it like that. It just depends. But that's another thing. Like that part of, I'm a very intellectual thinker in that way. I like math. I like puzzles. Okay. That kind of stuff. So that side of the brain is what
analysis.
So as opposed to like somebody who can hear something and then sit down and play it, or memorize an entire concerto. This boggles my mind. Yeah. How do they do this? I can't fathom that. So that lends itself to what I do. But specifically theater, storytelling, songs that speak from the heart or speak from some experience that can be related to by an audience. That's what I love, that connection, the audience performer connection, whether it's me conducting a show or just watching the show that I did and seeing the audience react to it. or being on stage. It's all part of the joy and the thrill that I get from being a part of a piece of theater specifically.
Yeah. Well, there's certainly nothing like live theater.
Not at all.
It's this connection that it's its own thing. It's almost on a spiritual level in a way, where you have all these people together,
Yep.
and you have this.
All strangers, mostly strangers.
Yeah, but the story going on, and it's almost like you become family of the moment,
Yeah, I love that. Family of the moment.
Family of the
I
moment.
love that.
And
That's
you
really
get
good.
connected with everybody.
Yep.
And
In this live experience,
yes.
this give and take between the stage and the audiences. Yeah.
Yeah, and that you can record that, but it's so unique. It's not the same.
And it's not, it's not film. It's not television. It's not.
Right.
Those have specific ways of presenting.
Correct.
But theater is so visceral. And it's in the moment, and it's
in
never.
the moment.
And once that moment is over, it's never the same again.
Right. Sure.
It's a different group of people watching. That something may happen on stage that's different. It's unique, and so that is so special. And I think that people who are not theater goers or do not have that, are not given that experience as young people, so that they carry that into their adulthood.
Yes.
They don't know that thrill. Like, they don't know what that is. And then when they see, I've seen this happen with kids, especially. You bring a child to a theater production who's never seen a production, and then maybe they're 10 years old and they've never seen theater before, and they just go, what is this? It freaks them out because it's so such a cool thing. Like, it really is. It gives me chills to think about that. I love that.
It really does.
And you mentioned, a spiritual experience. There have been so many times in a theater where it's like church. Like, I grew up going to church. I know what that means. I have my own belief system, but there are moments in a theater that have that are on that same level.
Would you say because of connection, maybe the
performer, the performance, something that's coming across,
came across,
it
touches everybody.
Yeah, and you're in that room with all those people. You're sitting in the dark, and there's just something next level about that.
And that's what makes that so unique.
Yeah, it's nothing else.
There's nothing like that. There really isn't. So can you tell us a bit about the Booth Tarkington and your program, or I should say, Civic Theatre?
Yeah. Well, we are the Booth Tarkington Civic Theatre. Formerly, we were known as the Indianapolis Civic Theatre. We have moved around a few times for various reasons, but currently, our current iteration is as the Booth Tarkington Civic Theatre. We are 108 years old. We are considered, if not one of the longest continuously operating community theaters in the United States. We didn't stop production during the World Wars or anything like that. So we've consecutively produced 108 seasons, which is pretty impressive when you think about it. Not a lot of organizations survive that long through the 20th century. So we are a resident company of the Center for the Performing Arts here in Carmel. We produce year-round, and we are a professionally managed community theater. The description of that is sort of like, what? What does that mean? Well, community theater at its root is a volunteer situation. Everyone volunteers. No one's getting paid. You're putting on a piece of theater for the joy of putting it on, which is great. That's valid, and I love that. And it's a movement that started in the early 20th century. And specifically for us, Booth Tarkington, who is a Hoosier, native Indianan. And ironically, I went to Booth Tarkington Elementary School. Isn't that weird? And now I work.
It was meant to be.
Tarkington Civic Theatre.
It was meant to be.
Spooky. But he was, an author and in Indianapolis, a very well-known, person and a personality. And he lent his name eventually to the organization, which started out as the Little Theater Society of Indianapolis. And we actually kept the name throughout all of our years, but we became commonly known as the Indianapolis Civic Theatre. When we moved to Carmel, to the Center for the Performing Arts, we needed to lose the Indianapolis moniker because we were no longer in Indianapolis. So we went back to our roots. And also...
Kind of like Baltimore and Indianapolis, right?
Yes. Thank you, Bill Hudnut. And in our becoming a resident company, they actually ended up naming the 500-seat theater at the center the Tarkington because of that connection. And so I love that historical
Continuity.
connection. Yes, the continuity. And, we like to think that Booth would be very proud, and his portrait hangs in our lobby.
Oh, very nice.
So, so we are professionally based community theater. So we have volunteer actors, but we have all professional staff. So any member of an artistic team, from the director, stage manager, deck crew, some people, we are professionally paid. And so, as a community theater actor, what we like to call avocational. Mm-hmm. This is not your vocation.
Sure.
Because that's hard. They come in, they are able to get an experience that fills them artistically, whether they are a teacher or a nurse or a lawyer or a doctor or a whatever, sanitation worker. You know what? It doesn't matter.
Sure.
Anybody can come and audition. Our auditions are open, and then we cast from what we have, and we put up a good piece of theater because we have a professional director, choreographer, music director, professional orchestra for all of our productions that are musical. And that's sort of our niche in Indianapolis. There are lots of other community-based theaters that do great work, and smaller companies that are also, either semi-professional or fully professional. We feel like we fit into the greater Indianapolis artistic community. Yeah. In our spot, and we've been there for 108 years. Mm-hmm. So there's a long legacy of producing good work. We are one of the 10 largest in the United States if you look at our budget. So we are set up to invest into our productions what we feel is necessary and makes our ticket price worth the experience that you have. That's basically what we do. Well, in addition to the education, which is a whole other thing.
Now, we'll get into that in chapter 2. But to conclude with this chapter, you had briefly mentioned it from the time in the college period, but what would have been about your favorite with Les Mis that kind of hooked you into it? But what have been your favorite productions? Because you've had over 125 productions.
Yes, this is like...
What are some of your favorites?
It's picking which child you like the best.
Yeah, that's kind of like it.
I mean, there are so
and the reasons why. Like, what are just some...
Right, so I always... I feel if I've been challenged... Mm-hmm. And then the challenge is met, and that the production is well received and is in my eyes good. Then that should be a favorite, right? Yeah. I would say when we did Les Mis, when we finally got the rights to do the show, because you couldn't for many years. Not a lot of people know this either. You can't just put on a musical. You have to secure rights from the creators of the musical, and that typically goes through a licensing house. There are a few big ones, and Les Miserables, being the huge worldwide success that it is, for many years was not available for license. I mean, it opened on Broadway in 1987, and we got the rights. And I have to remember, I have no concept of time since that pandemic. Like, I don't know what year was when. I think it was 2015.
So in the 2010s.
Yeah, we finally got the rights.
Wow.
So that's 30 years later. Am I doing my math? So, and then the very next year, they revoked the rights. Nobody could get it again because they were going back out on tour.
Back on tour.
Right. So there's that little window, and we got it, and we did it. And just being able to work on that score that had been like the seminal show for me. Like I conducted it. Yeah. I don't conduct all of the productions that I worked.
Sure.
It was just like that's up there. Obviously, Ragtime is another one that I thought was just a really great production that we did, and I love that score, and it's epic. Any Sondheim I get to do is always great.
The West Side Story.
Well, I've done West Side Story. That's a challenge. Bernstein, man, talk about, and I conducted that. It's a monster. But again. Yes, and that was a production that was sort of a meeting of, I don't know, like the universe. I made several very close friends in that one production.
Wow.
That was like it was 2009, I think. Mm-hmm. The very first Sondheim show I worked on as a music director, Merrily We Roll Along, which is getting a Broadway revival as we speak.
Okay.
It was a flop when it opened in 1981. It ran for 16 performances and closed.
Wow.
Yeah. A Sondheim.
Yeah.
This is on the heels of Sweeney Todd.
Okay.
Huge success.
Sure.
Huge. This tiny little musical didn't do well. It's finally getting another Broadway revival. So that working on that in the early 90s as I just graduated at Ball State was another challenge.
Mm-hmm.
But it was so seminal for me in solidifying that I knew what I was doing.
Gotcha.
When it came to tricky, sometimes it's not easy,
right,
on any level. But
because it's almost like lyric that's in the mind.
It's
like you're in the person's mind.
And the music is not always what you might think. Where it might be going, it might go a totally different direction. There are lots of harmonic things that are not normal, it's not Rodgers and Hammerstein over here.
Right.
It's very challenging intellectually, musically, artistically, all of the things. And so when you tackle something like that and you get it done and it's good, nothing like that feeling.
Great.
So that sticks out.
Well, good.
Among others.
Well, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Well, we're going to take a brief break right now, and we'll be back with Chapter 2 and Brent Marty. Well, welcome back. We're in Chapter 2 now with Brent Marty. And Brent, thanks for all of your musical knowledge and your life experience. When you're also involved in an education program, and can you tell the audience about what would be a wise path for a student, whether they're here in your program or whether they're anywhere else, who would be interested in theater in terms of performance? What are some wise choices that could really help them?
And are you speaking, just hypothetically, like as a career path? Just as an interest?
Or as an interest.
Okay.
Yeah, you can.
Sure.
I leave that open.
Well,
but, people who are interested in being involved.
Sure. So if a young person starts to express an interest, and let's say if it was me, I was talking about my music teacher, Mrs. Pike. There were other teachers along the way. Mr. Sumner was another teacher of mine in elementary school, and then Mrs. Powers in high school, and Mrs. Hibbs in middle school. Everybody, you have these teachers that stand out to you.
Sure.
So that was a way through public education. That's not always the case anymore. Sometimes you have to go looking for your artistic education, which is, unfortunate in a lot of ways, because every child should be exposed to the arts in some way. It enriches their lives beyond measure. You can't measure what that does, whether it's, just one little moment in their life that makes them think one way or whatever, or it's somebody who ends up as a major entertainer, has their own late night talk show, whatever it is. So if there's an interest, if there's, I noticed that my kid really likes dancing. They move around all the time, or they love watching, they love a specific actor on television. They're always acting out their favorite TV show, anything like that. Or if the kid says, hey, I have a friend who does theater. I want to do that. So find a program in your neighborhood, in your community. If you're fortunate enough to have one, then go check it out. Look at their website. Go audit a class. Sit in and see what they're doing. Take your kid to a performance at the theater if that's the case, if you have that opportunity. But finding just an outlet, and it can be anything. I don't like to say, well, our programs are this, and everybody should be in this level of program. I don't know. I don't think it matters as long as you're having some exposure to what that is. Yeah. From an educational standpoint, meaning you're getting training in technique. How do you sing correctly? How do you, what is your poise on stage? How to project your voice? What's first position in ballet? Whatever the basic thing is. As long as you're starting to get those things, and then if it takes, it takes. Some kids come in for one class and they're like, this is not for me.
Right.
I don't want to be up in front of people doing this. Okay, you're not comfortable. Well, maybe they end up behind the scenes. Or maybe that one experience in that class helps them become a great lawyer because they can orate. They can, they can turn what they're trying to express into something meaningful. So,
well, that's a good point.
Yeah.
Because for me, I was petrified in getting in front of a big group of people and talking as a kid. because I was a little more introverted as a child. I'm one of those brainy people,
I think there's more introverts in the world than there are extroverts.
Well, I'm extroverted now, but the thing was...
You've been converted.
I have been converted. I went to a private school in Chicago one year, the Morgan Park Academy, and Lillian Mackel was my teacher. She was theater. And Lillian, I hope you're listening, because you're awesome. We had theater, and really, in a nutshell, I didn't go into theater, but the thing was, she helped me be able to get in front of a crowd of people and know that
you could do it, and
correct.
and live. You did not die.
I didn't die.
Everything was fine.
Yeah,
yeah.
And so here we are today.
Find a program. And then pursue it if you want to pursue it. Keep going. Find other programs that are bigger if you want. Talk to your school if they don't offer a program. Find out if you're a parent. Find out why they don't have a program. Could they start a program?
Exactly.
There's lots of things.
Your program in particular.
Junior Civic, we call it.
Yeah. How would you? What are some thoughtful? I'll just say because it's out of my theory language. What are some points that you would help with students that would be getting into the program?
You mean what would they learn if they came into the program?
Yeah, exactly. And in order, what are focus points? I'm trying to create language here.
That's understand. So in our curriculum, if you want to use educational terminology,
sure,
which we do, we pride ourselves on being a top-notch theater education program in the state of Indiana. If you come into a class at Civic Theatre, no matter if it's acting, musical theater, dance, whatever it is, you're not only going to learn technique points, like I mentioned earlier, you're going to start to learn how to work as a team. Theater is a collaborative art form. It cannot be done with just one person.
Right.
Even if you say, well, I'm a solo artist, there's still an audience, and somebody has to turn on the lights or turn on the sound, or there's always something else that's a piece that's collaborative about theater. So you're going to start to learn teamwork, how to work as a team. You're going to start to learn respect for yourself and others.
Right.
You're going to start to learn self-awareness, self-esteem, build your self-esteem so that you can communicate with other people in an intelligent manner. And all those things are inherent. And all of those things transfer to every other part of your life. Yeah. I don't care what you're doing. It all becomes a foundation for you to build a personality on that can exist in the world. Whether you're an introvert or an extrovert, who cares? But you're gonna come from a place of knowing that self-confidence, that you can do something. You can create something, and it doesn't have to be on your own. It can be with a group of people. So you're taking those life skills and sort of bumping them up, infusing them from an artistic standpoint that translates into everything. The arts are everywhere, and no matter what art form you're in, any art form is going to do that automatically because you're training your brain to do something that's not necessarily inherent for everybody.
Yes.
So all of those skills will transfer. And so that's what you're going to learn in a theater class, anywhere. You're going to start to learn those elements, in addition to knowing this is stage left, this is stage right. Right. This is a piece of scenery, this is a prop, this is, all those things.
Exactly.
That come along just as part, being theater.
Part and parcel of being in theater. Oh, great.
Yeah.
No, that's what's almost like everybody should take that.
Everyone should have an artistic outlet.
Yeah.
And this is why it's sort of tragic if there's a school district or a certain school that doesn't have those programs. Think about those hundreds of children that they're not having that experience.
They're not having that.
They're not going to be better people.
Yeah.
I mean that sounds terrible.
No,
they're all going to be trash. No, it's not that. They're just going to not.
They're missing the opportunity to have that life experience and the skill,
which will enrich them, enrich their community, enrich the world. It exponentially grows.
Yeah, it's one of those I won't say humanist, but humanizing talents that you get from that. And it made me better for even the little experience that I had. And Brent Marty has been our guest today, and he's the Director of Music and Education for Tarkington Civic Theatre. We would like to think Our sponsors, Hotel Carmichael, and we're filming today from Feinstein's. We look forward to being with you in our next episode of The Omnibus Show.
If you enjoyed this program, please like, share, and subscribe to continue the conversation. For the Omnibus Show newsletter, please sign up at theomnibusshow.com.